While South Africa has seen an increase in kidnapping cases in 2023 to 2024, and although a broader range of people are being targeted, women and children remain at a higher risk. According to the country's third quarter crime statistics, kidnappings for ransom have become a lucrative commodity for organised crime in South Africa. So more than 300 suspects linked to these kidnappings have since been arrested within the last 2 years as well. But what happens to the victims after the traumatic ordeal is a story that is seldom told. And so for more, we're going to be joined by Emma van der Walt from Brave to Love to expand a little bit further. Emma, on that note, good morning and thank you for your time on the SABC at this hour.
Good morning, thank you.
Emma, the alarming number of cases coming to the fore, it's also seen a massive increase since the 2013-2014 period. We're also seeing a growing number of people taking out kidnapping insurance. And so in view of what is transpiring, given this phenomenon, perhaps you could speak to, from the vantage point of the victims themselves, how they struggle to adjust after an incident. Really, what happens? Talk to us about that process that they will inevitably have to undergo.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to speak this morning on the trauma. I think it's a very important topic to address. First, I want to say that when we're looking at the trauma, we need to understand that it's not only the victim that's traumatized, it's the entire community that faces trauma. It's the family members that go through the fear, the shock, and the effect of trauma. That is not only, trauma is very complex, but it's not only that period of kidnapping. The trauma effects of it is afterwards, where we're looking at, signs of PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, where there's nightmares, there's fear, even afterwards, because it's the family security, the safety that is affected. But when we're looking at the victim, we obviously, our organization work with human trafficking, which a lot of the victims are kidnapped while they're trafficked. But we're looking at a thing that we trauma bonding, when we've seen with victims in the beginning where they actually, as being kidnapped, to survive these kidnappers, they start forming the bond to protect the predators, those that are the criminals, and that phases out, and it gets very complex. But the sad thing is the fear, and that is can have a lasting effect, which is not only for a small period, and the support afterwards is much endured. It's sad for me to see families facing this, the effect of a mother losing a child, or where is my child, we've had those 2 children that were kidnapped a while back. It's very sad, and missing children, missing people in South Africa. How many of those people are recovered back? How many are coming back? I think our rate is recovering those victims is not high enough. We need to recover people that go missing or are kidnapped.
It's a grim picture. It sounds like you're also alluding to Stockholm syndrome between the victim and the perpetrator. And at this point, the interventions that are needed to assist victims, to deal with the trauma, is enough being done for victims at large post-kidnapping? What are you observing on that front?
Yeah, so obviously our recovery process focuses more on human trafficking victims of sex trafficking or different forms of trafficking that we face with. And I don't think the support is sufficient at this point. We need more counselors, psychologists, those that can, because we can't just talk about trauma debriefing, because trauma debriefing is not, it should be a long recovery process, of psychological support. Mental health is quite a large, yes. And when I talk about Stockholm, we call about that trauma bonding that starts taking place. We've seen in victims a lot of times the traumas cause paranoia, walking in the street saying, who's behind me, that hyper alertness where you look around, am I going to get kidnapped again? Am I going to get so when I go home do I feel safe and secure again? And, I think in South Africa, because of our kidnappings being so high, our country's traumatized, with not just kidnapping, but all kind of crime. You see the community is traumatized, those that are working with, with victims. But we do see a long-term process of recovery that is necessary when it comes to recovering and healing trauma, which is very important to understand.
Because a broader range of people are being targeted, women, children alike. They obviously remain at high risk, but the motives behind the kidnappings vary at this point. And so without instilling too much fear as well, I wonder in the same breath how we can exercise caution when it comes to children. Perhaps we don't want to instill too much fear and too much anxiety as well. How do we balance that as a society?
Yes, I think children are, as a community, children are of extreme importance in safeguarding them. There are, things that can be put in place, security measures that can be put in place by guardians, by schools, by those. We need to see where are these kids being kidnapped, where is high targeted areas, and safeguard them in these platforms. I think teaching children from a young age how to stay safe. There are security training available where even on the internet to safeguard the children. We've done projects at schools where we've taught children even at a young age. Saying, because a lot of times when a kidnapper comes, the first thing that happens to a child is fear that sets in, and that fear and adrenaline paralyzes them. So we've taught children, how do you control that fear and that anxiety that kicks in? Firstly, by voicing. So that child, their first response is for the child to start shouting, to voice, because that controls the adrenaline that kicks in when that phase. And it's not to bring caution and fear into the community, but it's being sensible and understanding, what can I do to safeguard my family? What can I put in place to make sure that I'm not a victim of crime? So unfortunately, with our crimes, we have to think that way to protect ourselves and guard ourselves, being eyes open, being alert. Yes, but it takes a community to stand together. I think we all as South Africans need to stand together and safeguard ourselves.
Because it's about the training, education, the correct use of vocabulary as well, using the voice, as you alluded to. But zooming out and looking at the broader picture, which is something you also touched on. I mean, the issue of organized crime in South Africa at large, the political, the societal issues are also important to note. The capacity of police at large, resources. Talk to us about what we're also observing in this current reality as well.
Yes, and that's the thing. That's a topic that I'm actually quite passionate about, because we do need resources more to be focused in our police and our safeguarding. We've got private security companies stepping up and assisting, but not everyone has the finances to So police, the first response of police is there to safeguard society, to safeguard our children firstly, which is a priority. So yes, resources and training, I think, within our police is very important. Sufficient training to start, to tackle corruption in these areas. It's always important, where a criminal will always try to align themselves with law enforcement to protect themselves. And I've been talking on children. I just came back from the United Nations, where we spoke on children that are becoming victim even to criminality, where they are trafficked into criminality, they're forced into crime. These children grow up in society in drug communities, where we need to safeguard them, where it's not always, a kidnapper, we think they will randomly just pick a victim. Sometimes these kidnappers groom and become familiar with the person that they want to kidnap first. So then the child will just get into the vehicle. And that's important to understand. It's not just a sudden random person walking on the street that they kidnap. Sometimes there's it's
all right, Emma, we seem to be losing your stable connection there, but I think we've got the gist of what needed to be echoed. Thank you for weighing in at this hour. I'm going to leave the conversation there for now. Emma van der Walt from Brave to Love, weighing in on post-kidnapping trauma, really on the back of South Africa having seen an increase in kidnapping cases in the 2023 to 2024 period. We're obviously monitoring those developments as the stories continue to trickle in.